was on its way home from Belgrade, where it had won its way through to the semi-finals of the European Cup. The plane was caught in a snowstorm on the runway of Munich Airport on the afternoon of February the 6th, 1958. At the third attempt to take off, the plane crashed, and among 23 people who died were 8 of the Busby babes, while Matt Busby himself lay close to death in a Munich hospital for weeks. Tonight, a quarter of a century on, Sports Night pays its own tribute through the eyes of Barry Davies.
Here's a shirt then, Duncan. Get changed, kid.
And have you got our tape? Yeah. Want some tape? Check out some tape. Got your tape, are you? Sir, you got any tape? Yeah. Is there any left? Lily? Yeah.
25 years on, and the yearnings of youth mingle with the memories of the more mature, as 2 local school teams compete for the trophy bearing the name of Dudley's most famous son, Duncan Edwards. A cup presented when he too was a schoolboy, captain of England, the start of a career which achieved so much in a span so short.
But if I had a match to play and my life depended on it, and I had one player that I could take with me out onto the field, it would have to be Duncan Edwards.
Big Duncan Edwards, you could just put a goalkeeper's shirt on him and he'd be the best man on the field.
But if I had a choice of one player, it's always Edwards.
He is one of the all-time greats. There's no question about that.
For those who saw him play, there will never be another Duncan Edwards. A legend for his physique, obvious even as early as 6 months old. A boyish enthusiasm he carried to manhood. For potential, good enough for heaven.
It started to crop up, this word, Duncan Edwards, this smasher that's playing for Wren's Nest Junior School. He was only 9 or 10 then. And every school that went and played them and visited them remarked on this lad, and everybody was saying, when he comes along up into the secondary modern schools, we're going to have a good one here.
The league clubs thought so too, but the local hero remained unaffected by the clamour.
The older he grew, I think, the more he shrunk. If you could put it this way, he was rather grooming himself for the future, I think.
He knew his own mind, he knew what he was trying to do, he knew where he was hoping to go. Strangely enough, he had no interest in watching football. He couldn't be bothered, say, to go to a professional football match and watch it. He wanted to be playing it. He'd much rather play football with a crowd of lads on the local park, mud tip, than go and see a First Division match. He just did not want to be a spectator.
How many books have you kept from your pupils? I mean, is it significant that you have one belonging to Duncan?
Well, only because I think I was much involved with him throughout the school.
But you decided that here was a pupil and you wanted to keep this particular book. Now, it seems obvious now, but it wouldn't have been at the time that you decided to keep it.
Well, I think it was, rather. I think he was going to have a glorious future. I think we knew it, and I would like that memento of Duncan when he was a lad.
I noticed that he was sent an exercise about a wish to go to Wembley.
Oh, that's where he talks about his father and his Uncle George and asks where Wembley Stadium is.
A true wish? Well, it all began when I was a little boy of about 7 years of age. My Uncle George and Dad were sitting round the fire when my Uncle George said to my father, "I see England playing Scotland at Wembley next Saturday." I thought to myself, now's my chance to ask him where this Wembley Stadium is while they are on the subject. I told my uncle, I wish I could go there, and he said I would before long. I was 13, and I still wanted to go to Wembley, and on the 7th of April, I was picked to play for England against Wales. My uncle was right when he said I would someday go to Wembley Stadium.
Starting while still 13, Edwards was a schoolboy international for 3 years, winning 9 caps, the last 4 as captain. Matt Busby, always the favourite, won Edwards' signature for Manchester United. And at Old Trafford, the 16-year-old stepped onto a conveyor belt of youth, destined for triumph and for tragedy. These were the heady days, days of companionship and competition. Football was fun, and the faith placed in youth revolutionary. A new team was being built to win the championship, the Busby Babes.
It wasn't too long after the war. Most clubs were there was no place to look at, you understand, because football was at a very low minimum during the war. But hit on this youth policy. I had it paid here.
I come to Manchester City as a boy, 17-year-old, and I felt it. The young players of the club were the people who were interested more in the club. They were more dedicated. And when I got this appointment made at Manchester United by Mr. Gibson, I made my mind up I was going to start building on young boys. Whatever boys had talent or had some skill and some of that, I made it my point to make a very good youth policy, and I started it from there.
Albert, what's your first memory of coming to Manchester United as a kid?
Meeting Matt Busby, I think. On a Sunday morning with a little pair of sharp pants on, my feet not touching the floor. And the trainer coming in, Bill Ingles, and calling Matt Busby in, and looking at me and saying, "Here's another one of yours." And, you know, Busby just coming up and patting me on the head. And he says, "We'll make a player of you."
The main factor was they were brought up in the club from basically young boys, schoolboys, we like school-leaving age. And they become part of the club itself. Dedication to the club and trying to get into the team. And this was a very important factor.
I don't think you sort of realise what was going to happen. They used to come to you and say to you, "Look, you can be in the first team." You know, when he was a 17-year-old lad.
They were brought up in the atmosphere of the club, and probably Jimmy Murphy was a driving force there, and they were Manchester United minded. It was their life.
There was a great family atmosphere here, terrific family atmosphere.
It was like a school used to play games for training. You know, if it rained or if it was foggy, we get a thick fog. They wouldn't say go home, you'd be playing games, you'd be playing rally ball and hiding in the stand. And I've seen people go up the floodlights just for something to do.
Life was all smiles, and while United kept a firm hold on the newly instituted FA Youth Cup, the Babes were born into the first team, which in 1956 brought home the championship trophy. Only Roger Byrne and Johnny Berry were left from the successful side of 52. Duncan Edwards came into the team at 16 and a half, and 2 years later had become the youngest to play for England. The spirit of British football, the England manager called him. They all were.
That's a long pass down byline, but Edwards is there to cut it off and push you back very comfortably towards the Manchester United goalkeeper. Throws it out to Whelan. Whelan dropping deep to get this ball. No one's moving for him. He's just holding it, And a very good pass indeed, right from the outside right position. It's Berry bringing it in quickly to Evans, the Arsenal fullback and left fullback. He's pulled it back. Oh, and he's too late. And it's there. Oh, there it is. Lovely goal there by Whelan.
John Barry receives and makes for the penalty area. He beats Ken Green. Everyone expects him to pass, but he fools them all and shoots. Manchester fans are wild with joy, but there's more to come. Outside left, David Pegg is on the move straight from the restart. Jeff Hall blocks him, but he retrieves it and tries again. Over to Bobby Charlton, who slams it home.
Everybody that arrived in United's youth teams wanted to be there. You know, none came under sufferance. There was this great love to get to play for United. And when we did get there, we all, in most cases, were in digs together, just down the road from Old Trafford. There was about 12 of us there. And you used to mix a lot, you know, as young lads. We used to go around together a lot. It was a terrific club. It was very, very hard by comparison to today, and as much as we used to have to do all our own travelling, we used to play at 16-year-olds in open age leagues, which was terrific, you know. And you go to Manchester, I remember going to play somewhere, I think it was Ferrantes. We played against Ferrantes, and the kick-off had to be 4 o'clock because it went dark at 5:30, 5:45. And I seem to remember us all on this muddy pitch somewhere out in Manchester, trying to keep warm, waiting for this team to come out, you see. And then at 4:15, the siren went, and these lads came out in the boiler suits and the black faces, you know. Where's these bloody United ponces, you know, I'll get stuck into them. And we're 16, you know, little lads all, and we had to tread a little bit warily. It was fantastic. It was a great experience and set you up for when you actually did go and play in the top bracket. And I think that they miss that sort of thing now. I'm sure they do.
The top bracket now included the European Cup. In '57, United, the first English team to enter, had fallen in the semi-finals. A year later in Belgrade, they were on the brink of that stage again. Their lead from the first leg against Red Star was narrow, 2-1, and so would be the final outcome, 5-4. United's goals in the first half in Belgrade saw them through, the first by Dennis Violet. The others coming in a 2-minute spell from Bobby Charlton, a man destined to become one of England's favourite sons, having survived the tragedy which was about to leave a city numb and a nation bereaved. Of the 44 who boarded the charter plane home, 23 died in the Munich disaster. Together with officials and journalists, 8 players lost their lives. Mark Jones, Roger Byrne, Jeff Bent, Eddie Coleman, David Pegg, Tommy Taylor, Billy Whelan, Duncan Edwards. The blissful display at Highbury the previous Saturday was now an aching memory. The babes were no more. When United appeared again in the Cup against Sheffield Wednesday, the programme was filled with emptiness. Jimmy Murphy, the assistant manager, had been with Wales in Cardiff. It fell to him to replace the injured, some of whom would never play again, and the irreplaceable.
We played Israel at Cardiff in the World Cup, and I said to Matt, Matt, I'd rather be with the lads. See, I haven't brought up the lads, you want to be with them, must you? No, he said, Matt said, no, you've got a job to do there. That's how that happened. And poor Bert, my good friend Bert, of course, took my place and he went. I had to find 11 players. Do you understand? 11 players, a lot of players.
And his daunting task lay not only at Old Trafford.
I went out with Matt's wife, Jean, of course, and the other players, wives and sweethearts. And Jean and I went into the very sick room where they had 50-50 chance of survival. I remember vividly, Barry, on the left was the pilot, who was well, our dear wife sat with him, unconscious. Across from him was Matt in oxygen tent. So I went across there, lifted up the flap of this tent effort, and he just turned his head and he said, "Oh, it's you, Jimmy." And he said, "Keep the flag flying," you know. Didn't converse long, he dozed off then. Across there, next to the pilot, was Johnny Berry. Very, very sad. Poor Johnny, how he survived, I wouldn't know. He had tubes in his mouth and his ears, tubes up to his feet. He was fed through the feet. Oh, right out, right out. Next to him was Duncan Edwards. I sat with him a while. He turned his head. And this is the saddest thing I've ever seen. Oh, been a part of. As a fact, he turned to me, "Oh, it's you, Jimmy." I said, "Yes," my ear down to his mouth. And he said, "What time do they kick off tomorrow?"
It was a half term and it was snowing, and you know, the world was very grim, and you just sat there and listened to the radio and read the paper. And Oh, it was dreadful.
And like everybody else, hope that maybe the
You
news would
hoped
come right.
that, yes, perhaps he'd pull through.
A quarter of a century later, the leisure centre at Dudley offers its reminders of the boy who clung to life.
Duncan Edwards was the greatest player that I've ever seen, the greatest player that I've ever played with, one that I would have hated to have played against. I love talking about him because there's really not a great record of what he did because he only played 4 years. You know, people talk about him as an all-time great, you know, and he only really played for 3 or 4 years at the top grade. He was a very funny lad, you know, he liked life, and he was very gruff and, you know, abrasive at times, but never in an unfriendly way. And the first time I bumped into him in the army, I arrived at Nestcliff during my national service, and it must have been killing him to be doing his national service when everybody else was playing football every day, you know. And we all hated it, but it must have been worse for him because he absolutely loved the game. And he picked me up outside the guard room when I arrived, and he took me to my billet and said, "Come on, I've got your bags, I've got everything for you. It's all sorted out. I've been waiting for you coming." And when I got in, he put my stuff down on the floor, and there was a spring missing out of my bed. "Don't worry about that," I said, "don't worry about that, I'll sort it out." And he literally picked the bed up and just walked straight out of the billet, and 2 minutes later came back with somebody else's.
He lived for the game, actually. I remember, you know, one of his famous saying, probably before the team would go out, and I'd be finished my last sort of speech or advice or talk, the big Duncan would get up and say, "All right, come on, lads, we ain't come here for nothing. N-U-F-F-I-N, nothing. We ain't come here for nothing."
He could do anything. He could either foot, right foot, left foot. He could manipulate the ball any way that he wanted to. If you wanted him to smash a 70-yard crossfield pass, he would pinpoint a 70-yard crossfield pass. He used to run around like a gazelle. He loved scoring goals. He was just a complete player. He was a fantastic defender. He was brave, he was good in the air.
Edwards like a tank when England in trouble in defence.
His physique, of course, was outstanding. On the other hand, I think that it's possible that it can belittle his actual football ability.
He seemed to make it all so easy, and it was so effortless and so well controlled, and it was sort of naturally done almost by magic.
Despair bred determination. The spirit lived on. With time, if to some the healer, to those of that family of youth, a bittersweet reminder of what it stood for. Even for those who in the intervening years have found, as Albert Scanlon has, that people need to be told of the part he played.
It gets a bit, you know, hurtful at times when they want us, they say, "Oh, well, Bobby Charlton was there, and Tommy Taylor was there, and David was there, Roger Byrne. What were you doing there?" And I say, well, there was like Kenny Morgans, Dennis Violet, myself, Mark Jones. I was there by rights. You know, I went there to play, and I played. And they turn around and they say, "Yeah, but we've never heard of you."
But hurt is not bitterness for a man for whom life, since he left Manchester United 23 years ago, has had its ups and downs.
I would love to have stayed at Manchester United, but things didn't work out like that. I was there at the greatest time in the history of Manchester United, and I can live on memories. Nobody can ever take that away from me. I think it's a great feeling to have been there. As I say, other people have made fame and fortune, and I made memories. And I'm quite content today to have their memories as they are to have the fame and fortune.
10 years after Munich, United met Benfica in the final of the European Cup at Wembley. In the side were two survivors of the tragedy, Billy Fuchs and the captain, Bobby Charlton.
I think a lot about the people that were killed, and there was a little bit of them in winning the trophy, you know, it was something for them. Nobody would be really satisfied about Manchester United's re-emergence as a football power until they won the European Cup. It was something special, it was something really personal that we had to do.
Charlton! Another! He's got another!
I think that was the night of all nights. It was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. The fact that at last we had won the competition that we had set up and set out to do. The main thing is that we felt that the dead had been honoured. I don't think I've any doubt that we'd have won it with the lads that was destroyed in the air crash at Munich. But I felt it was justified myself. The fact that here, at long last, we'd achieved what we'd set out to do.
For the teenager of today, that night is a memory their fathers talk about. Fathers who were little more than kids themselves when Munich brought such desolation. To them, and more to those who hide the scars, a schoolboy contest in Dudley was both poignant and consoling.
The winner of the Duncan Edwards Cup 1983 Dudley School.
It's 25 years since the disaster at Munich. Edwards I brought to the club as a boy. I coached him, but he didn't need much coaching. He was already a player. I've handled great players. I've handled world-class players. I've seen great players. But I can assure you the greatest of them all was Duncan Edwards.
In St. Francis Church, Dudley, is a lasting memorial to greatness and to affection.
He was quite an amazing in every possible way. Not only playing, but his mentality, his approach. I don't think I'll be able to see one Duncan Edwards again.
Kids, you know, hear him, you say, Duncan Edwards, he couldn't have been that good. But he was.
By the memory of Munich, from left to right, Dennis Violet, Ray Wood, Billy Fuchs, Harry Gregg, Ken Morgans, Albert Scanlon, Jackie Blanchflower, and Bobby Charlton. The only other survivor from the United staff was Matt Busby, the man who created the Babes and who believed they had only just begun to reap in the honours.
Felt that we had reached a stage when I could nearly have sat in my office for about 10 years and just went out and saw the match. They had reached that stage of experience, power, skill, and everything else. And there was prizes to be won, many prizes to be won, and I felt that probably they would have done wonderful things for a number of years.
After 2 league champions,
It would have made a big difference to England, without question. It would have made a fantastic difference to Man United. Me personally, I would probably never have played for England when I did. I would have never have been a regular in the first team as quickly as I was. With England, they would have had players like Tommy Taylor, Duncan Edwards, Roger Byrne, Eddie Coleman, David Pegg available at a period when they were just starting to make inroads into world soccer. From a club's point of view, we wouldn't have had to wait till 1968 to win the European Cup. I think we probably would have won the European Cup about 3 months or 4 months after the Munich air crash.
I heard a voice, Billy Whelan, and the voice came clear. It's still imprinted on my mind. If this is death, I'm ready for it. And I couldn't breathe properly, and I couldn't understand. Everything was now chaotic. And then suddenly, mercifully, I was flat out, blackout. Then I came to, and I couldn't breathe, and I was underneath the aircraft, and I could just see grey light, the sky, and the snowflakes coming down, as though crying, if you like, for the